Hey, welcome back, and thanks for joining another episode of Point of Connections. I'm your host, Jeremy Castleberg, and today we've got a really great episode for you. I get to sit down with Todd Kuckkahn. Todd Kuckkahn has been an establishment here in Stevens Point for quite a long time, and really a great resource for a lot of people to look to and learn about not only starting a business, but running a business, becoming a better leader, and just doing the best you can in your organization to facilitate a really awesome culture. And so in our conversation, you'll get to hear lots of different things about Todd, some of the events that he's done, some of his goals, and some of the areas that he'd like to take his business. I think it's a really fascinating conversation, one that for any entrepreneur out there or just somebody in the business realm, this could be a really nice listen to just learn some different things about how you can institute culture in your business. And obviously, if you wanted to dive deeper into that, Todd is going to be somebody you want to definitely reach out to and just see how he could assist you in your business. There's more about Todd at toddkuckkahn.com, so I'd encourage you to check that out. But obviously, watch the show. Please share with your friends and also leave a review if you'd like. I'd love to hear some feedback from you. And if there's somebody that you're interested in seeing on the show, definitely reach out as well at pointofconnections@gmail.com. Here's a little introduction to Todd and his business, and then the show. Hope you enjoy. In today's episode on Point of Connections, I get to sit down with Todd Kuckkahn, public speaker and a business leader consultant. Todd is an extremely experienced business leader, having spent years in various leadership roles, including leading the Portage County Business Council. In 2021, he left his role to focus on his own business consulting firm. Todd's website is full of great information, including a blog on leadership techniques, information on his Live to Lead series, and information on how to book his services. Todd is continuing to grow his services of helping businesses directly or holding large conferences for anyone to attend. Todd is based out of Stevens Point, Wisconsin, but he takes his services all over the United States. Todd's inspiring message around trust and using that to grow business productivity along with company culture is definitely something that is needed in the business and corporate world. Todd can't change the world all at once, but he can make an impact one client at a time, and in doing that, you can tell that he's living his calling to live to lead. This conversation is directed to the business that is looking to improve their culture and take their business to the next level. This is a great listen for the entrepreneur looking to build their growing company the right way. We know you'll enjoy the conversation. And here's a recent highlight from one of Todd's conversations.
People will tell you amazing things if you give them the opportunity to. Good communication will lead to trust. Patrick Lencioni wrote a book called The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. The foundational piece of that is trust. It's really tough to execute in a business, right? To have good productivity, good people, if you don't have that trust. There's 8 billion different people in the world, right? Every one of you, as you look down these rows and all your backgrounds and everything, each one, there's no two people alike. So get them involved, be inclusive, get other ideas.
Hey, welcome back to Point of Connections. I'm your host, Jeremy Castleberg, and today I'm joined by Todd Kuckkahn. Todd, thanks for joining the show. Appreciate it.
Well, it's great to be here. I'm excited. I haven't seen you in a while, since probably a basketball game or two, but good to see you.
Yeah, you as well. Yeah, we do cross paths occasionally. I think the last time might have been at UWSP when they're at the Century Classic, is the last time we saw each other. So
I think that was
good stuff to get over
there. Sports brings people together, right?
You know, and it's funny, this is way off topic from the show, but that's one of the things I love about high school athletics. It is a total community event, brings people of all different walks of life together. And it's relatively, it's always entertaining. It's fun to watch the kids compete. So I love that about youth sports and about high school athletics.
Well, just interesting to bring that up too, because it is a little bit of a segue, but it also isn't. We were in a tournament this past weekend, and it was a big tournament down at Just a Game at the Wisconsin
Yes.
Dells. And I crossed paths with 4 people through my world of basketball, through officiating, coaching, and all that. And interestingly enough, we talked a lot about leadership because people knew that that's what I was kind of up to. And so it was kind of nice seeing that, kind of full circle with basketball leadership and, reminiscing with friends and relationships. It all connects well together.
Yeah, that's cool. I was down there as well. We did not fare so hot, but it was a lot of fun to be down there for fourth grade. I know you're down for seventh.
Seventh grade, yeah.
Seventh. Okay. Very cool. Well, that's good to hear. So let's back up. We're going to get to the leadership here in a second, but I did want to kind of let everybody kind of know and have you tell us about yourself. Maybe what brought you to be, in the leadership consultation for companies. Give us the history that you have for your work history and personal that brought you to today.
Well, we don't have enough time for my personal history. You can tell by the color of my hair. But what got me in the realm, and I didn't understand all the leadership impact I had throughout my life. But what happened when I was at the Portage County Business Council, I was executive director there, the chamber in Stevens Point in Portage County, and a gentleman by the name of Tom Kuckkahn came to my office and wanted to promote an event called Live to Lead. And it was an interesting event. John Maxwell was one of the speakers. There was three or four other speakers, but they weren't a member, so we couldn't really promote the event. But then I said to Tom, well, what if you gave us 6 tickets and that will pay for your membership, and then we can turn around and we can promote the event and get some people there for you. So we did that. And being a somewhat smart person, I grabbed one of those tickets, and I got the chance to hear John Maxwell speak, and just was totally enamored with him, his style. And at that point, he was 70. He said, I haven't accomplished everything I want to in my journey, and I'm 7 years old. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I've got so far to go to even get, he's written over 80 books and all that. So I went to that event. Then I got involved in some small group leadership conversations. Then I read one of his books, and this was all through Tom and his team. Then I went down to his conference it was March of 2018. It was a leadership conference down in Orlando. Tough place to go in March from Wisconsin, right? But had a really good time there. It was a well-run conference, and the speakers also were excellent. So I got really interested in at that point, decided, I'm going to come back and kind of start reaching out to some people, see if I can get some speaking engagements, maybe do some workshops. And then it just continued to build and build and build, just like anything, you stay focused on it. And so now I'm a full-time solopreneur in the leadership arena. I've been about a little over 3 years now doing it, as a solopreneur. So it's been an interesting journey, an exciting journey, and I'm really enjoying it.
Interesting. I've never heard the term solopreneur. Did you coin that?
I don't think I did, but it's one I use often. It's the sole proprietor and the entrepreneur kind of put together. I'm a one-person shop.
That's excellent. Well, you mentioned a name, Tom Kuckkahn. I haven't seen Tom in forever. I wonder how great guy. Man, if he ever watches it, I always enjoyed my time. I was in BNI with him and really liked Tom. Sure. Really good guy.
Yeah. And now we stay in touch quite regularly. I actually now host a Live to Lead event through the Maxwell team, which is kind of, again, that full circle sort of thing. And Tom helps me a lot with that as well. We get together once every couple months, have some lunch, and we have a lot of similar connections. We, spiritually, our faith and leadership, and just the work we do or the work we've done. So yeah, he's doing well.
Okay, good to hear. So what makes Live to Lead a little unique? I mean, that's I know a little bit about it, but what makes it why that versus anything else?
Yeah. Well, what interested me initially was I always wanted to go to one of those events where they had these, kind of nationally recognized people speaking at, right? The John Maxwell, the Zig Ziglars, the Simon Sineks, and there were a couple other people. There was a I can't remember his name. He was a running back for Tampa Bay. He spoke, so there was a sports guy there. So he always has really top-notch speakers, and then. And not everybody impacts everybody, but usually with 5 speakers, you're going to have a couple of people at least that have impact you as an audience member. So that's where I really wanted to present that opportunity to do. And then when I do it as well, it's a day-long event, and I get to use the rebroadcast, so it's a video. And then in between each speaker, we do some different leadership exercises that help the people in the room. So this last year, I did 3 different sessions. One here, one in Wausau, one in Eau Claire. I think between the 3, we had about 130, 140 people. And it's just some great lessons from top-notch quality leaders who have done well and, could never afford to. It costs $100,000 to bring John Maxwell in here live. So I'm not at that stage yet, but nice to get him on the broadcast and then have people, talk about him and his impact and what some of his thoughts are.
Interesting. Now you'd mentioned, is that Warwick Dunn, the running back? That
Yeah,
'cause I
yeah,
think I've
that's right.
heard.
Yeah.
Okay, I've heard that he's been involved in some leadership things, but I didn't know which one it was. And I've heard he's done a tremendous amount of things for community wise.
Oh,
Okay, cool.
yeah, he
Um,
does. It's somewhere around getting. I think it's getting homes for people who are economically
yes.
disadvantaged. I think that's what it is. Yeah, just an
Yeah, no,
amazing guy.
that's really cool. So now help me understand too, like when I saw on some of your videos and your website, do you always do like a large conference, or do you actually go in sometimes and just go directly business to business?
I do a variety of things. That's my own conference that I do, Live to Lead. That's something
Okay.
that's kind of my one big conference for the year. But I also do both keynote speaking. So I'll speak at like association events, or someone
Mhm.
might have me come in for like the annual company dinner, that type of thing. And then I also do workshops as well, go into different businesses and work with, a handful to 100 people doing different workshops around leadership and culture, workplace engagement, those sorts of things. So mostly workshops and keynote speaking, yeah, is what I focus on.
Yeah, it seems like obviously there would be a very different message that you'd probably have to prepare for if you're individual versus a large group. Is there, I know you like all of them, but is there one that you really like? Is it sometimes fun to just go with the one business and dive right into like specifics with them, or do you prefer maybe the big group?
Well, I like them all, but I like where I can sit down in a room of, 15 to 20 people. My favorite topic is talking about trust, because I think that's such a critical
Okay.
element to being able to communicate, to handle conflict,
Hmm.
accountability, all those sorts of things. But really, really diving in and getting into the caring part of what the workplace can offer, rather than just the productivity. I mean, obviously, to run a business, to run a school, whatever it is, you have to have productivity. But to get to that, I think the best way to get to that is really building on trust. So there's some different workshops that I do and it's
Hmm.
amazing, again, that you think about caring in the workplace, and people kind of sometimes look at you like cross-eyed, like, wait a minute, what, caring? Well, yeah, it's an effective tool. And I've actually there's one business I've done a lot of work for, probably the last 2.5 years, going in and doing different sorts of workshops, and we've done vision, mission, value work. I've done with them, so strategic thinking. We created a culture team,
Hmm.
and then a lot of workshops related to things like core values, people telling their personal histories. People talking about one of the questions I ask is, talk about a challenging time during your childhood and how did that impact you, or how has it impacted you? And it's really interesting. People will really open up, and people have talked about some tough topics like divorces in their families, battling cancer, just being economically disadvantaged. So it's amazing what people are willing to talk about. And I think when you can break down some of those barriers and some of those walls and silos in a business between people, it just really creates a whole different environment.
Yeah, and I see. I've seen some companies kind of do that a little bit, but I think it's much more powerful when you can bring an outside person in, because it's almost like if my boss gets up and has me try to do that, it's not the same level of maybe openness that you would get. Whereas if it's you or it's somebody else, it's like, okay, well, I don't, this guy's from outside. If I tell him, you almost forget that everybody else is listening to you.
Well,
If you're
yeah,
sharing
yeah.
in a group, and then you're like, oh, I can share this. So I think I could see how that would be really beneficial when you get in and do those. Do you ever find those to be uncomfortable conversations, or are they usually pretty productive?
Usually very productive. And I always
Okay.
offer people, if you want to pass, you can certainly do that. And I've
Okay.
done this with, hundreds of people, and I've had maybe a handful pass on sharing some highlights. It might be too upsetting for them. And that's
Sure.
fine. Then we move on and go to the next person. But in most cases, people are willing to share, and just, you can see the people who are in the small group listening to what this person is saying. It's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I guess, he or she has had some of the same challenges in their life that I've had in mine. And, or now I better understand this person and maybe why they're quieter or more extroverted, or
Hmm.
whatever the case might be. So it really helps kind of melt that ice, among relationships. And when people say, you know what, we all come into the workplace with, I use the term baggage. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but baggage and challenges that we faced either that morning or sometime in our life. So if we can share those and have positive conversations in a safe environment about them, I really think it can help elevate the workplace.
Yeah, for sure. Now, is there a way that you're able to? You said you've gone back with companies multiple times. Is there a way that you try to measure like progress that's been made within the culture, or is it just kind of like with constant check-ins, or how do you go about seeing how effective it's being?
Yeah, great question. Leadership and culture, I will say, are tough to measure. They're so personal and about the environment, but there are some tools. The one company that I mentioned, I've been working for a couple of years. They looked at a couple different surveys related to engagement and culture and workplace, and created a 12-question survey of their own. And they've done it now. This is the third year they've actually done the survey, and they've seen I think 9 out of the 10 indicators all had a strong, well, maybe strong is too strong a word, but they all had an increase. Generally, things have been elevating and improving in that workplace. So, but it's also, culture and leadership, and you know this, Jeremy, is also about kind of feel, right?
Yeah.
You can walk, even a stranger can walk into a business and they can kind of sense like what is this place like, whether it's welding or whether it's teaching or whether it's banking. You can kind of sense what the environment is. So it's tough to measure. It can be measured, and I think it's helpful to do that to some degree.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because that was my thought was, having been in banking and being in teaching, and I'm like, how do you know when it is? It's hard to measure, but you're exactly right. You can feel it when you walk into a certain area and you're like, yeah, they have a good culture. It's just the presence of the people, or the I don't know what word I'm trying to use, but you can there's a different feel with a really good culture. And I've been in both.
Oh yeah, I've had many experiences myself, or we maybe won't get into those. We can, but and the other thing that's really important too is that, if I come in for 1 or 5 sessions, that's great, and I want that opportunity to help the team. But really, a lot of it, building that culture, is what happens in between the times I'm there too, because the company has to take on some responsibility and make it an ongoing thing that they work on. It's not, leadership develops daily, not in a day, right? You can't go to a leadership conference for a day and all of a sudden I'm an amazing leader. It's something that continually develops through leading and mentoring and working with others and relationships and connections and all.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've gotten to go through a number of those trainings. I mean, I just think back to all the ones I've been in, and you're exactly correct. Like, you always glean a little bit out of it, but the big key point is, what are you executing on? What are you actually implementing into your daily life, or into your company, or into your culture, that actually makes something, real, rather than just some really nice words on a PowerPoint somewhere.
That's 100% right. And I always try to lead the company, or when I speak, with, here's a couple things you can work on after I leave. Some of the exercises, we'll dive into them, but then here's a way you can use this tool when I'm gone, in your staff meetings or when you interact with people. So I always try to help, with that process, because I know it's hard to do if it's not right in front of you. And for me, it's right in front of me, but sometimes in the workplace, there are distractions, but I always try to leave companies or businesses, organizations with tools to use after I've left too.
So you mentioned trust, and I guess one of the questions that I am coming to my head is, like, what do you see as the biggest thing that prevents people from being able to have great culture in their company? Is it a lack of trust, or is it, you get stretched thin and you're just really busy? I mean, what do you, from your perspective as somebody who's an expert in this field, like, what do you run across as being that big obstacle to being able to break through to the other side?
Well, I think conflict. And conflict is a result of change. That's the negative side of it. When I'll go into a company again and I'll say, all right, how many people here like conflict? And nobody raises their hand, but they've never thought of, cheering. They never thought of the fact that conflict can be positive. If we're in a team meeting, and if I'm asking you questions about what you do, Jeremy, my intentions are good, right? I'm not trying to, and that's where the trust develops, where that if somebody asks you a question in the meeting, it's not about challenging you or thinking you're not doing a good job. It's about helping you think differently because we all bring different strengths to the table. Well, in order to get to that point where we have that positive conflict, that engaging conflict, you have to trust the people you work with. And again, it's something that you have to work on to develop that trust because we've all been in situations where our trust has been burned for some reason. And the other thing too is some people walk into a room or a meeting and maybe they don't know everybody and they're like, I 100% trust everybody. Some people walk into a situation like that and they're like, I don't trust anybody. So trust oftentimes has to be built or reinforced too throughout that process. But I think it's and in order to have that trust, it falls back on, communication. How do we communicate with one another? And unfortunately, well, it's never been easier to communicate in our world right now, right? We're communicating here with each other across
Right.
this platform. We can communicate with somebody in Africa or wherever in the world. But the problem is that our communication sometimes is not positive. And, social media has had a lot to do with that. There's so much more divisiveness because people can get on a social media site and say whatever they want. It's a free country, but oftentimes those things are damaging and they don't have the trust of the people. So it's all really, really intertwined. The communication, the trust, the conflict, the change, it all has to work together. But again, I think the central focal point really is that trust with people, where I know when you're sitting across the table from me in a meeting, you want the best for me, you want the best for the company, even if you ask me challenging questions.
Sure. Yeah, and it kind of reminds me, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie, now I'm blanking on the name, Office Space.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Okay, it's a movie basically where these consultants come in and there's a famous line. It's kind of a cult classic, but there's a famous line where the guy's sitting across from the employee and he says, "What would you say you do here?" Right? And so the way that he asked the question obviously is kind of condescending, but they're also knowing that these people are there to make to fire people. And so the trust level, to your point, super, super low because everyone's assuming if I answer this incorrectly, and a lot of the people are really nervous and they answer weird, they're on edge that if I say the wrong thing, you're just going to terminate my job. And now I'm out on the edge. Right. So that I don't know why, but I just thought of that. It's like, you're right, though, the trust level, if you believe that their intentions are true and that they're good and they're there to help you, you're going to be much more forthright on your conversation versus if think you're going to get fired if you say the wrong thing.
Exactly. One of the things, or two of the things, actually, there's two different phrases I use, but sometimes we don't know the best way to ask a question. And sometimes it's simple as saying either tell me more or help me understand. So rather than asking you a question where it sounds like I'm saying you're wrong, just say, hey, Jeremy, tell me more about what you just said, or help me understand. I'm not the brightest person. You don't say this. I'm not the brightest person in the room, right? So help me understand, or tell me more about what you just shared. And that's another way of kind of phrasing it so that you don't feel like you're asking an exceptionally challenging question, but still getting to the point where I can ask you anything in a meeting. And again, it takes work. You have to be intentional about it. And that's where the challenge comes in the workplace.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. So what is something maybe is there anything new that's happening in the leadership realm that maybe you're really excited about that you can share, or anything that's, kind of cutting edge or that you're working on?
I'm so glad you asked that question. It's like a setup question. You didn't even know that when you thought of the question. But I tell you, leadership concepts have been around forever. And I really think the terminology has changed. Like in the last, 5 years or so, we hear the word emotional intelligence. Well, emotional intelligence is similar to soft skills. All the terms change because people write a book and they come up with a new title for the book. And I'm not dissing people who write books because I was at some point in my life. But it's just, leadership is about influence, about connections, about relationships. It's about listening. It's about paying attention. All the things that we know. But the problem is that we're not intentional about it. Again, whether it's in the workplace, even at home with our relationships through our personal life. We're just not being intentional enough about it. So there's, the newest thing I've heard of now is this guy, and I like the concept. I might try to bring it here. He runs what is called an unconference. So a lot of times you go to a conference, right, and there's all these speakers, which I think is great because I'm a speaker. But the the way he runs his conferences is we don't have all kinds of speakers, because what you want to do there is you want to network with people. You want to sit down with people who are similar and talk about what are the challenges and opportunities you're facing and kind of help each other and coach and mentor each other. So like one of their sessions would be, all of you that are involved in real estate, you're going to be in this room. All of you are involved in education in this room, banking in this room, consulting in this room. And you'll talk about, some of your challenges in your network. Rather than having to do it in the hallway in between speakers, you do it in these rooms. And then another session will be, all right, everybody who's been in business 1 to 5 years, everybody 6 to 10. So you kind of get, different spots in their business. So it's kind of an interesting concept where there's less reliance on speakers and more on really us helping each other, which again, I still think it's a good conference or a good concept, even though I don't get to speak at it. But that's kind of the newest thing that I've heard.
So then your role would be changed from speaker to facilitator. Essentially, you're guiding through each stage, and maybe here's some of the things you want to talk about and how to make sure that you get, somebody like myself who tends to be more quiet. Maybe you make sure that everybody gets involved.
And that's another key element of being a leader in the workplace too, is making sure everybody gets involved around the table. The one thing I too also like to do, Jeremy, really focus on is customizing. A lot of companies have programs that you plug and play, and I don't think that's going to be as effective for a business. I like to have a conversation, much like you and I are having, have a conversation about the business and what are the challenges that you're facing. What are the things, and really kind of dig down into that, really getting to what are their pain points, what's causing them problems. Because a lot of times, and you've probably heard this before, especially being in education, is keep asking the question why. When a kid comes to you with a problem, or your son or grandson, that's not the problem. It's deeper. So you keep asking, why do you feel that way? Why is that? Why is that? And that's kind of what I like to do when I get on calls with HR people or CEOs and say, okay, well, you told me this, but why do you think that's a problem? And really trying to figure out what their pain is. And once you notice what their pain is, then you can get to offering them some results, and whether it's workshops, whatever the case might be. But just, and I've got a plug and play program, because that's what we're supposed to do. I don't know if I've ever used it, to be honest with you, because I end up really trying to adapt it and customize it to the company.
Yeah, I'm sure they appreciate that as well. I'd be the same way. You kind of work. I think what you're saying is you start with a framework, and then you mold it to whatever it is that you're, like you said, if it's education, it's going to be a little different tilt than if it's going to be, for banking or whatever it might be. No, that makes sense.
Exactly. I don't do any teaching in AI. That's not my area. Mine is all leadership and culture. And within that, let's figure out what can best serve your organization. Yeah.
So I was going to ask, but since you mentioned AI, I did send you, is AI going to impact your business at all in any way? Do you think that, like, from a leadership speaker, that AI somehow could infiltrate its way into being a leadership course or something along those lines?
Well, I'll tell you, it's already helped me.
Okay.
I use it quite a bit. I give it some general concepts, a paragraph or two of information, and it spits out a bunch. And then I take it and I tweak it. So I already use it myself. But that wasn't really your question. Your question was, it certainly can be a great tool in the workplace. Okay. My fear, though, is that when you look at trusting somebody, it's really about conversations. And I think the best way to have those conversations is face to face. If you look at engagement in the workplace, this is the 10th year, I think, of engagement in the workplace declining. So that was pre-COVID, where it was starting to decline. It's only declined more, and remote work hasn't helped. Now, I'm not saying that businesses shouldn't utilize that tool. That's fine, but ultimately, people need to be face to face to resolve their issues. It's hard. You and I are having a great conversation here. We can see our nonverbals. We can, the vocal inflections there. We can engage with each other. We can see whether we're smiling or frowning or sitting up straight or slouching or whatever. and you don't get that oftentimes through virtual. Now, again, I have a virtual program that people can sign up, pay for, and take and do and all that, and that's fine. It's kind of a teaser, hopefully, for them to bring me in and do some real face-to-face work with the company, because I think that's really what makes a difference. But AI can help a business get going, and but I think at some point the face-to-face is still really critically important.
So why don't you talk a little bit? How are you using AI? If you don't mind sharing, like to amplify yours, I'll give you a quick example on mine. I Teaching actually is battling with how to deal with AI because kids love it. They want to be able to plug in and say, "Hey, shoot out a 2-page paper on the French Revolution," and whoop, there it is. And we're
Yeah,
like, "No, slow down. You can't do that." But on the flip side, I'm trying to teach my students how to use AI in an appropriate manner. So, for example, I have an entrepreneurship class, and I one of the things I just incorporated was like, can you use it for ideation, coming up with business ideas? What are some top trends? Give me the top 10 trends of, from Google on new business startups, and it'll spit back. And to me, that's an acceptable way to use it. And
sure.
you're kind of using it to kind of enhance your imagination to some degree. Or sometimes I'll use it for mine. I'll be like, hey, I know I want to do a lesson on X. Give me a lesson plan for a 50-minute class on this, and it'll spit me out some stuff, and I'll look at it
Yeah.
and say, I'll use that, and I'll use this, and I'll throw out the rest.
Take out the
So
pieces you
for
want.
me, yeah, I really think it can be really cool and beneficial and kind of enhance what you're already doing. How are you using it?
Yeah, it's interesting because I was at a conference. I was doing actually an entrepreneur conference for veterans. I was teaching at. There was about 20 veterans there. It was a weekend
Oh, cool.
training, and I trained entrepreneurs as well. But the guy who was with me, he we talked about elevator pitches and
Mm,
pitching your business and how to do that. So he typed in a chat GPT, put together a grading form for a business pitch that we're going to have these people do at this conference, a score sheet essentially. So
oh,
it
interesting.
produced this, and I saw this document. I said, "Oh, Zach," I said, "this is awesome. This is incredible." He goes, "Well, Todd," he said, "AI did that for me." He tweaked it too, and
Well, sure.
I thought, geez, that kind of feels like cheating to me. So I talked to him a little bit more, and he said, "Well, Todd, here's the deal. You can go to 20, 30 different websites and do a lot of research on this score sheet I got, or you can ask Chat GPT to research for you." So, and that's what he did. It took the best. So if you look at it as a time saver,
Yeah,
I think that's good. A way that I use it, for example, is I'll put together, I'm going to do a presentation on trust and communication and team building. And I have an email subscription list. So I send out emails to people, and I want to have a catchy title so that they open
sure.
the darn email. So I'll say, okay, here's my topic. Give me 10 catchy, gitchy, edgy titles that I can use to capture people's attention from an email. And it gives me 10 titles, and 7 of them are garbage. uh,
Right.
1 or 2 of them are really good, and then one usually hits, and I'll take a word from. So sometimes in the
Hmm.
creativity realm, it's really helped me. But it's all about the prompts, as you
Yes.
well know, and the better and deeper, more meaningful prompts you get. So it does force kids, or forces me to think about, okay, what do I need to tell Chat GPT to do to get me the best
Hmm.
results? So I think in that, if you can use it kind of that way as a tool. But the sad part is that a lot of kids use it, like you say, write a
Yeah.
5-page report on the French Revolution, and part of the process is research. And if you're going to type good prompts for I think you have to be able to understand how research works. And if you're not
Yes.
researching yourself and going through that struggle, it's really going to be tough to get the most out of Chat GPT. So, yeah,
Yeah.
crossing that line, I totally get that with you in education, how that's a huge challenge.
Yeah, and that's what I try to explain to them is there's, when you're talking about the appropriate way, and the other side that it leads into is if you know your topics well enough, whatever it gives you, you should be able to read it. And, whatever AI spits out at you, if you prompt it well, you should be able to read it and say, "Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. That's maybe not right." And that's the danger I think that a lot of kids get into is they'll use it in a way that they don't even understand what's being spit back at them. They just, "Yep, sounds good. Send it in." So, anyways,
So
but
you're
I do think it has its benefits.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So here's a silly old man story. Back in the day when we had like films that ran through projectors, right? You
Oh
probably
yeah.
don't even remember that, but anyway, so another teacher asked. They were teaching social studies, and they were teaching a unit on China. So he ordered a movie on China, and he brings it. He gets the movie delivered to him, whatever, mailed to him. Puts the movie in the projector. It starts playing. Well, it's about China like you eat off of, not China the country. So it's kind of a similar way in chat. You got to be careful what you tell it and make sure you tell it the right stuff and prompt it in the right way, or else you're going to get garbage back, right? So, I mean, if you do the French Revolution thing, you got to have some understanding of the French Revolution to know if Chat GPT is giving you the right stuff too.
Yeah, so it doesn't give you the French toast revolution.
Exactly.
Very different.
Let's talk about food. It's dinner time.
Yeah, that's right. One last thing I'll add on that. I actually had a topic where we talk about taxes in my personal finance class. And this is one of the cooler things that I thought ChatGPT did for me, because you mentioned research. I wanted to be able to show the kids the last 100 years of the income tax and then what the levels were versus then not the effective tax rate and the marginal tax rate. And you plug all those things in, and it generated a graph for the last 100 years, what the effective and the marginal tax rates conversely were. And it's like, man, I did that in probably 30 seconds. And I'm able to then take that to my class and use it and be like, hey, this shows you the difference about this is your marginal, your effective, the difference between them. You don't always pay what your tax rate is. Man, it was super helpful. And I'm thinking, 10 years ago, it would have taken me a long time to research all of that and plug it in and make a graph out of it. And
then you can spend more time figuring out how can I make this come alive for the students rather than trying to find the information, right? What questions am I going to ask? How are we going to discuss it and all this? So yeah, it's a great way to use the tool.
Well, very cool. All right, so enough about AI. So what is some of the things goal-wise that you have for your business? I mean, obviously from what I'm seeing, doing really well, and obviously you've got clients now. Where does this all lead?
Well, I really want to impact as many people as I can. I love to bring value to people, whether again through a keynote speaking or workshops. My kind of silent, which isn't silent anymore because now I'm on the podcast saying it, but I'd like to speak in front of 17,150 people. And somebody said, "Well, Todd, that's an odd number." And I said, "Well, that's the seating capacity at the Kohl Center. I like to speak at the Kohl Center sometime. So that's my lofty goal of speaking, but." I really love, again, I love, as I mentioned before, whether it's one of my first speaking gigs, I did a breakout at a workshop. I got paid $50 and I spoke to 6 people in a classroom. And I thought I was in heaven, right? Because that was one of my first ones. Well, now I've kind of amped up and, I like to speak in front of more and more people. I love to travel. I've had the chance. I spoke once in Cancun. I spoke once in Toronto and somewhere around the Midwest. So I love to do that as well. And I think, another kind of ultra goal is turn my my life into what I would call vacation freedom, where I can travel when I want, I can work when I want, and even combine the two. If I can get a speaking gig in Boston, then go out and spend a week out there, speak one day, and then spend some time, being a tourist in the city of Boston. So those are kind of my ultimate goals. But I think just impacting more. It's so. What I really like about the workshop too is it's so great to see the light go on in people's minds about whatever the topic is, right? You can sense, again, like walking into that office, knowing their culture, you can sense when something's really impacted somebody in a different way, and that's really fun to see, because I'm sure that's how I was when I was at the Live to Lead conference, my first one that Tom got me to, right? My eyes probably, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is it. I found it. So even if it's one person at a time, I enjoy that as well. It doesn't have to be 17,150 at a shot.
That is a very specific number. I love it though. That's a really cool goal. And man, I just think about what you just talked about. And if what I'm hearing is you're one of these guys that probably are never going to officially retire.
No, I don't think so. Yeah. Both my folks are alive and doing well. They're slowing down physically, and they're in Stevens Point here, and they just all the time they talk about, they wish they could do more. So I'm thinking, well, you know what? I'm healthy. At some point, I'll get at a point where I won't be able to get around and do these trainings and things. And while I can, I really enjoy it. And again, if I can tie it in with some other travel and things, take my wife along and all that much better. So yeah, I don't see it's going to be a forced retirement because of some lack of a certain ability. But I really enjoy what I'm doing. I love it. Yeah.
No, that's really cool. It reminds me of we just had somebody come into Spash that talked to us, and he talked about John Wooden, and John Wooden, right up,
Right.
I guess, to the end of his days, was basically going around and talking. And I think it's just a testament that obviously you love something so much. It's not work. It's something you really just enjoy doing, and so why would you ever stop? I mean,
Well,
you might not do as many as you did prior, but you don't stop.
yeah, yeah, and it's like you kind of throughout your life you kind of have that shift, and you come out of high school or technical college or the military or for whatever you come out of, and you have a job, right? And for a few years
Hmm.
you have that job. Then you kind of start thinking about, okay, a career. I think I found what I like, and you have a career. But then at some point in your life you find your calling, and that's what I really feel that I found with this leadership and with consulting through that is my calling and how I can make a difference. And as we kind of joked about before, I've had a few situations in my life that weren't as positive as others, and I want to try to do my best to help others avoid that kind of a negative situation and really make the most of their experiences.
Yeah. So yeah, one of the things that I was thinking about as you're talking about all those experiences, I would imagine you probably don't get a lot of young people, and when I say young, like out of college, that do leadership councils, right? Because you're going to have some experience, some background in, so you kind of got to go cut your teeth through some of these organizations to be able to kind of develop your leadership style, and you got to be in leadership. So if somebody wanted to go and start a business similar to what you've done, what would be your experience or your recommendation or your advice to them?
Well, I think one thing is again now the communication is so much easier. Is get online and listen to leadership speakers. Listen to John
Okay.
Maxwell, Simon Sinek, Zig Ziglar, some of the older ones that have been around. But find those speakers and listen to them and try to not copy, but try to emulate them. I think getting to like I went to a conference that really turned it around for me. Maxwell has them, many people have them, but getting to a leadership conference, finding people, like myself, I love to sit down with people, whether it's on Zoom or whatever the platform, or whether it's face to face, sit down and talk to them about what they're interested in, what direction they want to go, and then trying it. If you're interested in speaking, for example, do free speeches. Rotary clubs, Optimist clubs, all those service clubs are looking for speakers. They don't pay, which I totally respect and get, and I love
Yeah.
speaking with them because sometimes I'll try something new. But as a young person or a newer person who's older, starting out, it's a great way to kind of get yourself into it. If you're in the workplace, ask your supervisor, hey, I'm really interested in the leadership track, and ask them what can I do to help elevate myself, in the company, or there's some trainings I can go to. So you have to be active and you have to be intentional about it. But those are a few ideas that come to mind.
Interesting. When you mention that, it almost makes me think about like when I've listened to some comedians talk about how they became stand-up comedians, and then they go and they just do an open mic and they riff on some stuff, and then you build a set, and then eventually you get paid, and then you go back to open mic and riff some more stuff, and then so you're like a comedian, but just a
Well,
little bit different, right? Leadership
yeah,
wise.
it's very similar. Yeah, you got to start. It made me think of what's his name, Dave Barkowitz or Burke. He was on Saturday Night Live anyway,
Okay.
but he talks about, I saw a post today, as a matter of fact. He was at some national awards ceremony, and he was talking about, wait a minute, what am I doing here? I'm a little guy that does this stuff in a club. I'm not, but he's a national comedian now. But he started, like you said, he started in these clubs where 10,
Huh.
15 people are half in the bag and throwing stuff at him, and you just keep working at it and pushing and doing it, and you get more and more along the way.
Hopefully that doesn't happen at yours where they're half in the bag throwing stuff at you.
I haven't had that happen yet. I don't think I've had any hecklers either, but yeah, I kind of wonder about that sometimes. But I haven't had a performer in a bar yet, so that's probably a good thing.
Oh, that's true. I never would have thought. I would imagine you wouldn't have anybody heckle you or like really get confrontational, but I guess it's possible if they really felt like you were off base or something, and they that I didn't even think about that happening. That'd be kind of crazy.
Yeah, I don't do real controversial topics. I mean, I talk about faith, and I talk about politics, but not in a
Mhm.
one versus the other, or you are, or you weren't type thing. I just talk about it
Right,
as
right.
something we have to be able to communicate about. So yeah, my topics are pretty calm. And if in an evaluation, somebody might say something they didn't like my style, or they didn't agree with
Sure, sure,
something, but
sure.
not to the point where where they're heckling or
See,
walking out or anything like that. Yeah. Geez, now you
you
probably
know,
jinxed me, Jeremy. Thanks.
no, I wouldn't see that with you, Todd. And you probably handle it like I handle my classroom. One of the best compliments I ever got from a student was they said, we never were able to tell where you fell politically. And
Yeah.
for me, in the classroom, it's a stated fact that we're not supposed to
Right.
talk
Right.
about anything political. But
Right.
when you talk about things like today, we talked about taxes. I even had to preface, and I'm like, this is a very political issue, right? A lot of people it's since the dawn of time, taxes have been around, and it's
Right.
been a talking point for almost every political campaign. But what we're talking about today is not political, right? I'm going to just talk about specific things, how it works. But I think you're probably of the same mindset. It's like if you diffuse some of that when you go into it, it's like,
Yeah.
that's not my intention. Then hopefully people will understand that, this isn't meant to be one way or the other. And I always point out too, that this has been nobody's been successful really on this issue across the
That's
board.
right.
So
Well,
it
one of
doesn't
my
really matter.
yeah, absolutely. Well, one of my topics is differences make us better, and I talk about how we
Yes.
have 8 billion different people in the world, and I want to talk to as many of them as I can. I had a conversation in a restaurant. It's been probably a couple months now with somebody who I knew was opposite on the spectrum from me. He was coming up from Milwaukee. Matter of fact, the same guy that I did the training with for the veterans, the entrepreneur training. But anyway,
Hmm.
he
Okay.
came up and I started asking him questions about his ideology, and we had a great conversation. And we both knew we were different, but I wasn't trying to convince him to my quote unquote side. He wasn't trying. We were just sharing knowledge and information. It was really
Mhm.
refreshing, and I think that
That's cool.
whether it's politics, religion, generational differences that we face in the workplace,
Right.
DEI type issues, and whatever it is, if you walk into it with the right attitude, and that's what like you say, that's what I try to kind of bring out on the front end. Let's be real about this, and there are 8 billion different people in the world, and let's figure out how we can use trust to help get us through some conflict.
Yeah, I love that. That's really cool. Um, one of the things that I was kind of curious about, are there misconceptions about your business, like what your industry does or what you do? Do you run into a lot of misconceptions, or for the most part, people kind of know, hey, it's Todd Kuckkahn, he's going to do X, Y, and Z when he comes in and speaks?
I think people understand it, but I think leadership is sometimes um, fearful. Not I don't know if fearful is the right word, but they're a little bit tenuous about it because they feel that sometimes, not all the time. So all you leaders out there, don't diss me
Right,
on
right,
this,
right.
but sometimes they feel they might lose some control. I went to one company and took 4 months to convince the leadership team that we should create this culture team in their organization. And because I think they felt they might lose some control. And it turned out they still have it. It's been probably 3 or 4 years now. They've had this culture team and it's been doing great things at their business. But, it's tough for especially the top leadership to, if it feels like they're letting control of it. So I don't
Mm,
know that it's controversial necessarily, but I think it's challenging because they feel if they and then the other concept is, what if I train these people in leadership and they leave? Well, what if you don't
yeah.
train them and they stay? Then you're going to be a lot worse off, right? So why not invest the time and money and train people, try to keep them there and help them become better leaders rather than worrying about them, leaving what you have. So yeah, it's all kind of perspective on that.
Mm. You hit on that. That's a really good point, though. What if you don't train them and they stay? I mean, just having gone through managing multiple teams throughout my career, there's nothing worse than when you have somebody that you dropped the ball on, and I'll own it from that perspective, that you dropped the ball on and didn't teach them well enough,
Yeah,
and that becomes a real burden on yourself when you're a leader, because you end up having to either train them on the fly, or you have to pick up the slack somewhere else because you didn't do a good job of training them. And when I was a young leader, I was very guilty of that, because I would take over difficult tasks and try to do it myself rather than delegating.
yeah,
And I learned later in my career, like, man, I really dropped the ball and made life way harder on myself because I didn't train them appropriately, and I would have set them up for then future success to be better in their current role. So yeah, that's a definitely a problem with people, and I was guilty of it as well.
Well, when I was at the business council at the chamber, we had a small staff. There was 6 of us, I think. But I always told people, I said, if I can't provide you when you're here with what you need to develop, then I don't blame you for going somewhere else. But I'm going to do everything I can to help you grow. And we brought in one person and hired her as a receptionist. After a year or so, she flipped it around, became our marketing director, and then son of a gun, we did such a good job, she left, and now she's a president of a small company in central Wisconsin. So, but that's what I want. That's what it's about. I mean, she did so many great things for us while we were there, and we just didn't have a good enough opportunity for her because of the size of our business. But she took a great job elsewhere. Now I was sad. I wasn't mad. I was personally sad, but I was so excited for her and where she went to, because I knew what they were going to be, what opportunities she was going to offer for them to build and grow that business. So kind of like having kids and sending them off to the workplace. So it was a great feeling.
That is cool. If I remember correctly, her name is Angel, right?
You're right.
Okay.
Angel Laidlaw. Yeah, exactly.
She was awesome. No, I was really happy for her when she moved on. Like she had a really cool opportunity, and she turned it into even better opportunities. So kudos to her.
Yeah, she's done a great job. She's amazing.
Yeah, that's cool. So you've gotten to see all kinds of different stuff, like from a leadership perspective, but then you also started your own business. You've led some companies. And you've also done some trainings on entrepreneurships. You're a solopreneur. Is that what you called it?
Solopreneur, yeah.
Solopreneur. So if you could give 3 pieces of advice to somebody this is an entrepreneurship podcast. What are some of the things that you would recommend that they do, like things that they develop, either skills or, what should they have in their toolbox if they're going to go out and start their own company, young, old, doesn't matter. What are some things you would recommend that they have in their toolbox?
I have on my phone, so I see it multiple times during the day, a saying, sell the problem you solve, not the product or service. Nobody cares about your product or service. They need a problem solved. And that's what you need to focus on. And that's what you need to sell. And once I figured that out, getting back to these pain points, right? What are the pain points of the people that are going to be your customers? So I think that's one aspect of it. Know those pain points and understand those well. Probably a second recommendation would be, who's your target audience? We all want to sell to everybody. I'm sure you deal with this in your class, right? We all want to sell to everybody, but the more you can narrow it down. Matter of fact, I just this year I've started to narrow down my target more. It was leadership and corporate culture. That's great, but now I'm really focusing even more in on workplace engagement. And that whole issue in chat. So and I'm reaching out to HR directors, primarily also CEOs of organizations. That's my target. And I happen to relate better to a female audience than I do to a male audience, for whatever reason, I guess, because I had 4 daughters, maybe that's why. But know your target, know your niche, know what your problem is. And then the third thing, probably I would say, it's achievement over activity. Now I didn't want to call you out during the podcast, but you said the word busy, and busy is a 4-letter word in my mind. Don't be busy, achieve things, not just activity. Hard work does not equal success, because we all work hard, but yet we're not all successful. So what's that missing ingredient? It's achievement. It's creating those habits and priorities that you need to focus on to grow your business. So those are probably the 3 things that I'd share.
Man, I probably don't even remember when I said the word, that bad B word that I said.
I'm just yanking it, Jay.
No, I probably did. It's funny. We have verbiage in our vernacular that we often use and don't even realize that you're using it. And I'm sure that's probably one of those. So
it's just a little quirk of mine.
No, I'm with you. I have certain ones like that too, that sometimes the students will say, and like, I'm going to call you on that one. But yeah, always in good faith.
So you have trust in your classroom, right? They can call you on that.
Yeah, and actually, it's one of the things I actually encourage them to do is to challenge me on things. I actually have a
Yeah.
student. He was raising his hand a lot, and he's questioning me on it, and he kept apologizing. Like, I'm sorry. I'm like, and I even said that to him after the class, in front of the whole class. I said, I really appreciate that you asked a lot of questions and that you pushed back, because that's going to serve you much better in your life than just never questioning anything. I would much rather you question and ask, like, you'd be like, I disagree with you on this. That's where we can have some real conversation, because that's where learning is going to take place. And I think that's where we need more of that, like you said, that trust level, whether it's in the
Yeah.
classroom or in the boardroom or wherever, that people can speak up and know that they're not going to be chastised or run out because of it. They're somebody's
100%.
going to listen to them, and you might have a dialogue, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah, and kind of in another way too, I'm doing a sales training for the Mosinee Chamber, and one of the things I teach in that sales presentation is, first of all, your first sell, it won't sell in the first ask, and
That's
secondly,
true.
ask for obstruction. I mean, you want to find out the obstructions, or
Yeah.
what's in the way of people doing it, because then you can help them
Yep.
figure that out. So in the same way, you want to be challenged by your students, because that's going to help you be better, and that's going to help you teach differently, and it's going to help those
Yeah.
students understand in a different way. So yeah, that's really healthy, a really healthy attitude, Jeremy.
No, that's cool. Yeah, thank you. So Todd, where would people go to find out about you, and about what you do? Is the website the best place?
Yeah, website's fine. It's my first name and last name.com, toddkuckkahn.com. My website's a great place. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn and Facebook as well. I post every workday at least something about leadership, so you can
Okay.
message me through that as well. Or my email is todd@toddkuckkahn.com. So I'm easy to get a hold of, and I'm happy to talk with people. I just had someone jump on my calendar this morning, and I used Calendly and set up a meeting. We're going to talk about a possible speaking engagement. So, yeah, I love chatting. And if nothing else, just going to grab a cup of coffee somewhere in town at Mission Coffee or wherever, and talking about
Yeah.
leadership. That's fun too.
Mission leadership. You almost like led into. I'm trying to get Russ on the show, so that
Oh
would
yeah.
be.
Oh
We
man. Yeah.
just
Get him on. Absolutely.
Yeah, we just got to find We've talked about it. We just got to figure out a date. So that's going to be
Sure.
really fun. He does a
Sure.
great job with Mission Coffee.
Oh, that's a great entrepreneurial journey there.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, cool. So, anything else you would like to share or add, that anybody should know about you
No,
or about
I
our
love
business?
the game of basketball. Matter of fact, I just posted today on, I think it was today, put some stuff out there, because now it's coming up on tournament season in March,
Oh
depending
yeah,
upon, this may air after, but it's March is my favorite time of year because of basketball tournaments, and it's also my birthday month too, so that helps. But no,
nice.
I really appreciate this, Jeremy. I've known you for so long, and it's an honor to be on your show and chat with you a little bit about leadership, and hope the listeners get a few good nuggets to take away.
Hey, pleasure's all over here, because man, you've been ever since I came into the Stevens Point area. It was always you at the business council, and I learned a lot from. I got to go to some of those meetings, the
Yeah,
little sales meetings, and whenever I got to bump into you, it always was a great time. So I appreciate it and all the help you gave me as well. So
you
thank you
bet.
for stopping on it. It's been great to chat with you.
You bet. Thanks so much. It's been mutual. Thanks, Jeremy.
Sounds good. Awesome.